All right, so let's take a look at how you can build this inverted look for your Auto Layout Carousel slides in Squarespace. We're going to build this in 3 steps. First, we're going to invert the order of the content and the media. Second, we're going to invert the order of the content and the button. And third, we're going to add a couple of additional styles so that we can achieve this final look. If you want to follow along, you can use the settings that I have highlighted on the screen so that you can get the exact same result. And if you like the little icon that I have used for the button of the cards, you can grab that in the description box below. And with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop onto the code. So the first thing we're going to take care of is the order of the media and the content. The way that we're going to flip this around is by using a very specific flexbox property. That is because this content is already sitting within a flex container. So that's already set up so that the tweak that we need to make is going to take pretty much 3 lines of code. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to open up here one of the list item cards, and you're going to notice that we have 2 big elements. We have this one, which is the thumbnail area, and we have this one, which is the content area. Like I said, those 2 elements are sitting within this parent container that is already a flexbox container. And then here on the right side, you can see that this has been set to a flex direction of column. This is basically just stacking one thing on top of the other. What we want to do is change that flex direction value from column to column reverse so that we have the same elements stacked but in the reverse order. So to be able to target this container, I'm going to be grabbing one of its classes. I'm going to be using list item just because that class is shorter. And then since I want to implement this customization only on this section, I'm going to be working with the anchor link that I already gave this section, which is called inverted slides. So let's go ahead and add that in our code, inverted slides, and then I'm going to target here list item. Now what we're going to do is change that flex direction value from column to column reverse, and that one is typed in with a little dash in between both words. So once we have that there, you can see how automatically now I have the content at the top and the thumbnail at the bottom. So step 1 is already completed. Now let's do the same thing for the content and the button. Inside this list content area, we have 2 elements. We have one that is called list item content text wrapper, which is holding both the title and the description. And then we have another one that's called list item content button wrapper, which is only holding the button. So these 2 elements are sitting within the parent container that is called list item content, which is also a flex container. And if we take a look here on the right side, we can see that this one also has that flex direction property set as column. We're going to target this container, the list item content. And in my case, I'm going to target it for that specific section because I only want to make the modification for this area of my website. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to apply flex direction, column, reverse. And now we're going to have the button at the top of the content, which in turn is on top of the thumbnail. As you can see, now we have steps 1 and 2 already complete. So it's just a matter of adding a couple of extra modifications via CSS so that we can achieve the final look that I showed you in the beginning. Now, the first thing I'm going to take care of here is the spacing around the content. Now, because of how I want my button to stay here on the right side, completely aligned to the edge of the card, I'm not going to be using the content width setting that we have within the section, because that is going to push inwards both the content and the button. And I want the button to stay where it is. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the container that is holding both the title and the description, and I'm going to give it a max width limit so that it matches the limit of the thumbnail underneath it. If we go back into the list item content, you can see that this whole container holding the title and the description is called list item content text wrapper. So that is the container that I want to target. And I'm just going to add that down here and include my anchor link ID. So once we have that there, it's just a matter of, like I said, reducing the width of that element. Now, as I mentioned before, I want this to match the limit of the thumbnail. So what I would recommend doing here is using the same value that you have applied for the media width inside the settings as the value for the max width of this container. So in my case, that is 75%. So that's the same value that I'm going to be using. And to be able to center this, I'm going to be applying a margin 0 auto, which is going to help me distribute the spacing between the two sides of that limited container. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that there's not a lot of space in between the content and the thumbnail. So because we're working with a layout that is not native to the section, we don't really have an option to add a little bit of space down here. So I'm going to do this manually through this same snippet because this one is targeting this whole content container. I'm simply going to go back in and add a margin at the bottom, 3%. So that looks really good, but I don't really like the alignment of the content right now. I'd rather have it aligned through the top of the titles instead of through the bottom of the descriptions. So I'm going to go back into my list item content snippet, which is the one that is modifying the order of the button and the description. And inside this one, I'm going to be applying another Flexbox property, which is called justify content. And this one, I'm going to set it to start. What this is going to do is make sure that all of the content is aligned to the top of that parent container, of that list item content container, instead of distributed within it or aligned elsewhere inside it. So with that in place, you can see how now all of my titles are aligned through all of the different cards, and that just makes it look even better. Now, last but not least, I'm going to be adding a little bit of a border radius to the cards. So I'm going to go back into my snippet where I'm targeting that list item, and I'm going to include a little border radius here of 5 pixels. So once I do that, you can see how everything looks great, but there's one quick thing that I want to note. If I were to make this a little bit bigger, say something like 50 pixels, you can see how this corner is not quite rounding in full. We don't really see that with 5 pixels, but it's definitely obvious if you're going to be using a bigger radius. So what's happening is that this button that we have aligned to the top right corner of the card is currently overflowing the whole card. But because the background is white, we can't really tell what part is what. But in any case, if you run into this type of issues when you're applying a border radius to any other element, the fix is to basically go into that same container where you're applying the border radius and give this also an overflow of hidden. What this is going to do is it's going to crop anything that is within the whole container. So in our case, the content, the button, and the media. And if anything is trying to go over that border radius, it's simply going to get cropped and you're no longer going to have any edges coming out. Now, I have to admit that this overflow of visible creates a really cool look, but that's not the one that I showed you in the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this as overflow hidden, and I'm going to put this back as border radius 5. Now let's go ahead and take a quick look here. Let's save the changes, open this up, and then you can see how the same customization applies to all of the cards. It looks great. And then if we take a look at the mobile preview, everything just carries on here. We have everything looking great and nothing is overflowing. We have the border radius applied. We have everything in the exact same order that we have on desktop, and the customization is completely done. And that's it. That's everything that I have for you today. And now you know how you can flip the order of both the media and the content, or the content and the button, or both things at the same time for your carousel auto layouts. I really hope that you enjoyed this small build and that you're able to apply it on your current or future client projects. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up or let me know in the comments down below. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.